woman's journey. Now I realize for probably over 3, probably 4 years. So I'm so excited to have her sitting in front of me and for us to dive into all things entrepreneurship, coaching, stepping into the woman you're meant to be, and motherhood and everything else in between. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So, for those who haven't been following you on Instagram for over 4 years, just let's rewind a little bit. Let's take them back. I actually was reading when I was prepping for this interview, I was reading a post that you shared. I love hearing you talk about your journey and manifesting your husband and your family life now and what life used to look like before. And I think it was a story about how you created your perfect birthday well ahead of having even met your husband, who then later on went to create that for you. And so I'd love for you to just share with us kind of that journey of where you were before and how you've stepped into the woman that you are now.
Yeah. Ooh, I love this. So you did your homework. So I always thought of myself like when I was younger, I was a high achiever. I was an athlete, played volleyball in college. So I always kind of had that identity, like I was meant to do big things. But I typically followed, the route I felt like I was supposed to. So, I went to college, got a degree, played volleyball, all of that. And, I had like at the time, a smaller vision for my life. Like I was like, oh, I'll just go do something, be successful, whatever, create the life that I want. And so I get out of school and I feel like that's the first time in your life where, and I'm going way back, sorry, but it's all important, where you you actually get to evaluate for a second, like, what do I actually want rather than what has society told me, like, oh, go to high school, go to college, do these things. But I wasn't yet at a place where I could really listen to my truth. It was like, oh, okay, so I just need to get a job and create success and then start a family and all of that. So I was in a sales job. After about a year, I realized I didn't love it. And so I took another job. And I was like typical millennial. I bounced around from job to job every year because what I
Mm.
didn't know at the time was I wasn't really checking in with myself on like, what do I really want to do with my life if I could do anything? It was like, what makes sense? What's my degree in? What would look good on paper, all of that. So I just kind of job hopped for a while. And I started to notice this trend happening where it wasn't just with my job, it was with my relationships, it was with my health, it was with every single aspect of my life, felt like it was below what I knew I was capable of.
Mm.
And I went through this period of time where I just kind of was blaming people and things like, oh, it's just the jobs. I don't have the freedom I want. It's my boyfriends. They're not making me feel special enough. It's the diet plan. And so I went through probably 8 years of what I would call like changing my circumstances over and over and over again. And yet finding myself in the exact same, like different situations, but exact same feelings. And it felt like it was Groundhog Day over and over
Mm.
and over again. And so it took me banging my head against the wall for quite a while to then have this moment where I was like, okay, I am the common denominator in all of this. At the end of the day, I can blame all these things, but I've changed everything else. And yet here I am in the same spot, feeling the exact same way. And that was really, a lot of people ask me about that moment, like, oh, did that feel so terrible? And I was like, for me, that was the most empowering I felt in my life because I finally felt like I could look in the mirror and I was the person who could change my life rather than feeling like it was out of my control. And so with that, I had gotten into network marketing a little bit, started reading personal growth. So like it all kind of came together so perfectly. And I met a life coach and at a networking event for my full-time job, actually. And I met her for coffee and I was like, wait a minute, what do you do? And I just like pour my heart and soul out to her. And I literally walk out of that coffee meeting, like I decided to help her or decided to hire her. Um, and it just changed the entire trajectory of my life for so many reasons. But the biggest one being that she was the first person that I felt like really looked at me and I could share my crazy vision and ideas that I felt like nobody else understood. And she was like, oh, yeah, you could totally do that. And then on top of that, I was making a big investment that no one in my life agreed with,
Yeah.
and my parents and my boyfriend at the time. And so that was really hard, but it challenged me to step into being somebody who trusted myself and what I wanted and having my own back, that I
Yeah.
went forward with it anyway when no one agreed. So all of that is almost, I felt like a battlefield of stepping more into the person I wanted to become. And that really changed like the trajectory of my life. I first like really worked on my life, saw a massive transformation, launched my coaching business, replaced my corporate salary in 6 months, and just like I was off and on my way, and my life was on a completely different trajectory than it was.
Let's not even skirt past the fact that you replaced your salary within 6 months because that's huge. And I think that's a huge piece to anyone listening who thinks, yeah, I want to take a leap of faith. I want to shift gears, or I know what I'm doing isn't right, but the fear is there of what if. So looking back on that period of taking the leap and going for it, what do you actually attribute to it working, to the success that you actually did go out and create?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I have to give some credit where credit is due. I think it's really important to understand the full story. So I had done network marketing for probably a year before that, and I had tried it once before. So it wasn't like I wasn't on the internet at all and then just all of a sudden showed up
Mm,
and replaced my corporate salary in 6 months.
right.
I think it's important for people to know that. So I had been in a way without realizing it, kind of because I started talking about personal growth rather than network marketing. And I was warming my audience without knowing it. And then when I decided to launch my coaching business, it was kind of just like, kind of happened effortlessly because people
Yeah.
had been watching my transformation. I think so often, it's so fascinating. I've coached many, many coaches and just seen this happen with a lot of coaches in general, where it's like, they're like, I don't have testimonials. I don't have, and I'm like, you are your best testimonial. And so people with, I wasn't even trying to sell coaching, but people just watched my life change. And so they wanted what I had to offer. And then I think there was this component of, I believe nothing in our life really changes until we hit that moment where we decide like it's happening no matter what. And through a couple of different situations in my life, I like lost my grandma. Lucky for me, that was one of the first people I had lost in my life. She lived a long life. And then I lost a teammate that I'd played with, and she was like 24 years old in a tragic accident. And I feel like those moments brought me to a point where I was like, I am not like, one, my life is temporary. And so I am not going to spend another moment of my precious life not going for the things that matter to me. Like, I thought I would rather get to the end of my life and look back and failed and looked silly and embarrassed and like know that I gave it my all than spend my life just telling myself this is as good as it gets and I can't have anything more than that, and just like going through the motions. And so that really brought me to this like fire in my belly. And I was like, I'm doing this. I am not willing to settle for anything less. And with that decision, I think that creates so much massive, just like fuel and success, because I was willing to try anything and look silly. And that, I believe that's why it really exploded so fast.
Yeah, I love that. You can hear the certainty even in your voice when you go back to that moment. And so I can imagine and picture you going through that with that certainty. And that must have been the magic ingredient, is that you made a decision and you committed to it and you went for it. I'm just
Yes.
curious because I think people can have that moment of this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be a life coach, or insert whatever works for you. And then a few days go by, and then a few weeks go by, and then a few months go by, and that unwavering energy has dissipated.
Totally.
Were you aware of that? And if so, did you have tools? Did you have an understanding of how you stayed committed? Because I think that's genuinely, even when I look at women that are in my circle, what causes people to waver and falter and like fall off of the trajectory that they know that they're meant for.
I mean, this even happens to me now. Like, I'll
Me
have those
too. That's why I'm
moments,
saying
right? Like,
it.
right for my, like, where
100%.
I'm headed, I'll be like, I'll have those moments and I'm like, let's go. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, and then a couple of weeks go
Yeah.
by. And yes, totally. So I think for me, and this is good to reflect on for me as well. Um, was in that moment, because I have my own coaches now, of course, but I made a decision that reflected that commitment and certainty, which at that time was to invest an uncomfortable amount of money in myself and hire
Mhm.
someone that I knew would not allow me to back out on my dreams, because
Yeah.
I knew myself well enough to know, like, I get excited about things, I try stuff, I'm like willing to do things, and then same thing, right? Like, I'm like, it dissipates, like exciting things come, summer comes, and I get distracted. So I was like, I was like, okay, this is so important to me. I'm unwilling to back out on it, even though I know I will sometimes, or that excitement will fade. So, what do I have to do to make sure that I can't? That
Yeah.
I like, there's no way I could possibly back out on my dreams. And so
Mhm.
that commitment really helped carry me through, because, again, and it's all about where you are, and you have to like reflect on why you're making the decisions you make. But that investment at the time was really scary and uncomfortable for me, and it in actually a positive way, it really pushed me. Like, I was like, I have to show up. I have to show up every month. I have to make this work, cuz otherwise I'm not going to be able to pay what I committed to paying.
Mhm.
And that really helped like push me through that.
Mhm. And I just want to highlight as well something that you said about from a business perspective, how you'd almost been nurturing your audience without realizing you'd been nurturing your audience. Because I think people wait for like a permission slip or like the day one where like now I can show up and talk about my offer or now I have to go for it. But let's say you are in a job or you are transitioning or you're figuring out how you can go full time into your online business, you have that capacity to be nurturing your audience and creating a bond. And in fact, I think that's even more powerful because you're creating this know, like, and trust factor without having actually the need to sell anything in the beginning. Do you feel like that really helped you?
100%. Honestly, I replaced my salary before. I don't even remember saying I'm a life coach and I'm taking on clients. I think I was just
Mhm.
so passionately talking about coaching and my growth. People would literally message me and be like, "What are you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And I think that's something that 100% agree gets missed in entrepreneurship, is we get so like focused on the offer and like selling and making it all right, rather than bringing people along for the journey and letting them see the transformation and the growth in real time, that we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot, and then we're offering something to like a audience who has no idea what you're even talking about. So that helped me tremendously. And it was fun. It was light. It felt like I was just sharing what was on my heart, rather than like trying to like figure out what I needed to say to get
Mhm.
them to buy something.
Yeah. And I feel like if I think about what I feel when I read your posts now, I feel like you still do that. I feel like it's still that energy of just, this is my journey.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I feel like there was a point where I lost my way a little bit, and I started to think like I had to do things differently in order to, which I think
Yeah.
you do, but I was thinking I'm doing it wrong. And so I started to get much more like tactical in
Mm.
my explanations. And I really felt like I lost like the heart of me and what I do. So thank you. That feels good, because that means
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
I understand that. I feel like we've all gone through those pivots, especially if you've been in the industry for more than 4 or 5 years. But I want to just highlight as well the journey to manifesting your family, because I think that this is such a key component when it comes to living a life of abundance and wealth. It's so much for us women who have ambitions, so much beyond the financial figure or the success in our business. It's about really living that fully holistic, abundant life. So you talk about showing up as the woman you knew you were meant to be. How did that play into manifesting the abundant relationship and even the family that you have now?
Yeah. So I ended my previous relationship, and I did so much work on myself during all of that time period when I was like building my business. And so I was single for like 6 months doing lots of work. And one of my favorite quotes is like, create your bliss and then invite someone to join it. Whereas for most of my life and my relationships, I was like relying on them to create it for me. So I just really felt like I mean, and I had my own dating woes and so many learning opportunities, that's for sure. Definitely like to date guys that I had to work really hard for, and not the greatest people at that time. But as I did all of that and learned and grew and all of that, I started to get to this place where I really understood like my value and what I wanted. And I had this moment actually, it's really interesting. It was like 2 weeks before my husband asked me out on our first date, where I was like, I am so happy. And I also felt that, like, and I want a partner, but I'm willing to wait as long as it takes for
Mm,
my person. Like, I will wait until I'm 45, and I wanted to have a family. Like, I'll wait until I'm 50 if I have to, because I'm not willing to settle in this area of my life. And I felt so in charge of my happiness in my life that I was like, why would I invite anybody into this world that
mhm.
wouldn't add something, right? And so I feel like that really, energetically, I feel like that created a ripple effect. And then my husband like asked me on a date. We had actually met previously for business. And it was just like 7-hour first date, like hit it off, just like both felt in our souls like we were meant to be together. And that didn't come, with growing up without growing opportunities either, because again, some of my patterns wanted to show up. I'm dating now this very secure, nice, amazing man, no drama, right? And my brain's like, what's going
Yeah,
on?
what's wrong?
Yeah, what it tried to sabotage it a couple
Yeah.
times, but he just was so grounded and so certain, and I showed up for that work too. So, um I feel like that just certainty and willingness to wait, honestly, is what attracted it so quickly to me. And then, of course, that was kind of the two puzzle pieces as we grew together and got married and all of that, that then turned into our now family. I have a daughter,
Mhm.
and I have another baby on the way. So,
I want to dive into what that transition looked like in motherhood, but the fact that you talk about manifesting that man or your husband, I should say, with so much certainty, trust, and faith. I can't help but think about how that actually applies to money mindset work because I'm a money mindset coach and I talk a lot about money mindset on the podcast. And I actually think that relationships and dating have a lot to do with how we date and create a really fruitful relationship with money. And I'm just curious, have you applied similar tactics, or not tactics, that's the wrong word, similar energetics to your relationship with money? Because what you described in manifesting your man is so much of what I would teach when it comes to abundance.
yeah, 100%. Actually, it's so fun because one of my favorite things to do, I mean, I coach on all aspects of life, but I always like to pick an area with my clients or with myself that like it's working and be like, okay, what is the difference in my thought process here versus over here?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
100%. I think for me, there's probably more growth in that than was like in the. I mean, there was lots of growth in the relationship piece too, but 100%. Actually, one of the things that I teach in my membership in the money piece is I talk about it like a relationship. I call it the like there's the I can't even remember what they're called now off the top of my head, pregnancy brain, but I use that example because it's like where you're always chasing them or then they're
Yes.
always chasing you versus like this. So it really is so applicable and 100%. And it's just hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, that's such a good reminder, is like the trusting in the inevitability of it and like
Mhm.
latching into that certainty is what creates, and not like not having those rushed feelings. Cause I think for women in relationships, and this happens with money too, especially when it comes to thinking about a family, there is a lot of rushed energy around it, and I think that doesn't
Mhm.
always lend itself to the best decisions, and again, that rush energy pushes money away, it pushes partners away, and all of
Yes,
that, so totally.
for sure. And as you have up leveled and grown a very successful business, what are some of the money mindset beliefs that you feel you've had to shift or release or be very conscious of as you continue to grow in your business?
Yeah, oh my gosh, so many. I mean, like, if I go all the way back to the beginning, I think I had to, and that's something I still have had to work on, and different adjustments as I continue to grow. But like that, I had to work so hard to create
Mm.
money that was like, that was the equation: work hard, work harder, and that will be equal more money. I think that there was a lot of beliefs around like, it's only okay. this is kind of interesting, but like it's only okay to make money if you're like if it's for the good of people, which I believe like what I do is for the good of people, but that can really get that like used to really get me in a trap of like it was always like, oh, I rather than just believing I could just make money effortlessly and doing
Yeah.
whatever. And I think the other piece was um when I first started growing my business and I was triggering a lot of the people in my life at the time, like they would start to say things like, all you care about is money. And like, so
Mhm.
really trigger some of those things where I was like, I would self reflect and be like, is that true? Cause I love money. I was really motivated by it. And also, at the same time, there were so many other things I also cared about. So it just like it really challenged me because I was had to reflect on, is it bad to want to be motivated by money? Is it bad to work really hard to want to make a lot of money and all of that? And I really worked through that at that time. But there's always growth. I mean, I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things, it's been so fascinating to me. The more I grow, the more success my business creates. It always just mirrors back to me more and more that money mindset has nothing to do with the amount of money you make. Because I make money now that I would have dreamed always would create feelings of certainty. And it's like, oh, nope, that's still my job. Like, that has nothing to do with how much money is flowing in and out of my bank account. Because entrepreneurship is it's it's a like if you change offers, if you do whatever, like there's changes and
Yeah.
that is can be risky and scary and all of those things. And so it really starts with that. So that's where I still have opportunities to grow for sure.
For sure. And I'm a money mindset coach and I still have to work on my money mindset. Go figure. And nothing like becoming pregnant and having my first child. We both have daughters, a similar-ish ages. Like that brought up a lot of
Oh,
stuff, like on so many levels. I don't know. Well, you're pregnant with your second one, but mine's 16 months and I feel like I've just stopped postpartum.
oh,
Like
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm just coming out of it. I feel like the clouds are starting to clear and I'm starting to really tune back into what it is I want, how I want to, even though I've been creating and even though I've been working and even though I have really created this amazing like balance with how many days a week I work versus how often I'm with her. And I love that. But I'm only just getting to a deeper sense of purpose again. And so I would just love to hear you're also a few months ahead of me of like what that journey did for you and your business and how it shook things up for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It shook everything up like
Yeah.
in the best way. How I could describe it, how I'm like, I don't know if this is the best way to describe it, but like I feel like becoming a mom kind of takes all of your growth and puts it in like a pressure cooker. It's like because when it's just you and you've got all the time in the world and like it's easy to ignore some of your growth. It's easy to ignore some of those signals and things. And I feel like when you have limited time, limited energy, limited like just all sorts of different resources, inspiration, creativity, all of those things, which I believe they're abundant, but at the same time, when there's all these new circumstances coming into play, it um it really forces you to take a good hard look at where you're limiting yourself, where you're
Yeah.
telling yourself you have to do things that you don't really want to be doing, where you're out of alignment, where you're in alignment. I would say that's the biggest thing for me. I mean, my business looks 100% different than it did before I had my daughter. Um I mean, I closed 2 offers that essentially together made $1 million in my business. I just ended them. Um,
Why? Let's talk about why. Like, I really want
yeah,
the nitty-gritty of this because that
yeah,
to some people is going to be like, what? But I understand almost on personal levels because when I was coming out postpartum, it was like anything that wasn't aligned, it was like my body wanted to throw up. Like I just couldn't
totally.
do
Yes,
it.
yes, because I mean, it's even gonna make me a little emotional to talk about because it's like you all of a sudden this like human comes into your life that you like just can't imagine loving anymore. And it's also so hard at the same time, but when you imagine spending time away from them, you don't want any of that time to feel like an obligation, to feel like you're doing something because you have to feel like you're selling your soul away because you have this program or this thing that you've done for so long. It's like, it really is like, I think if you pay attention, right? Because I think about so many moms who are going to jobs that they hate and all of that. But if
Yeah.
you are willing to tap in and like pay attention, it just for me, I was like, I don't wanna spend a single second away from this human that doesn't fuel me, that doesn't feel like it is making me feel more creative and excited and invigorated, that it's not adding to my life or our lives, and I think I had known for a while, like, it felt like my business has kinda gotten out of alignment, even how I was doing my social media, all of those things, but it was just subtle and I could kind of ignore it, but then when she came into the picture, it was like, I can't ignore this anymore, and I'm unwilling to ignore it. So,
Yeah. What were some of the symptoms do you feel of being out of alignment? Like, how did that show up for you?
um, I think when you first become a mom, there's, an adjustment pe well, there's so many
Oh
adjustment periods, but
gosh.
there's, like I mean, there's an adjustment period for me, especially around, like, what I can achieve in a
Yeah.
day. Like, I mean, I took a 3-month maternity off my business and it was running on its own and all of that, but, like, even when I wasn't working, it was just like I noticed I was like and then when I went back to work, it was just like I felt rushed the whole day, and I think there's part of
Yeah.
that, just the growth, but it felt like I was just forcing myself and bullying myself into doing all these things I didn't really want to be doing, so I felt not I don't think I don't wanna use the word resistance because I always find where there's resistance, there's growth and there's curiosity, but it just felt like I was trudging through mud and I was, like,
Mm.
pushing myself and, like, um I don't know, I just feel like internally I actually made a video about this yesterday, like, I think I felt a lot of anxiety and overwhelm and, like, sadness, like, all of these emotions that I would try to, like, work through or whatever instead of realize, like, "Oh, these are here to tell me something, and I need to listen to them."
Absolutely. And so you listen to that intuitive nudge or scream
Yeah.
and you close the programs. What happens next? How do you sit amidst the craziness of being a new mom, amidst all of the life changes happening, amidst, I'm sure, like money mindset questions and all the things in
Oh,
between?
yeah.
How do you sit and listen to what the actual answer is for you?
It's hard. I mean, I think most of us spend most of our time running from those answers until we hit a breaking point and we decide to listen to them. But I think for me, I spent time I think I did ignore it for a while, but I think I spent time thinking about the cost of not listening.
Mhm.
And that always helps me to me that is just truth that is coming face to face with the reality of ignoring your inner voice and that I can always connect with. I mean, I have so many I feel like my mission is, so many different things, but one of them is I always think about like I want to be an example to my daughter of like the type of woman I want her to be. And so when I can always connect it back to like even if this fails and even if it sucks and I mean my business like very much supports us too. So it's not just like, you
Yeah.
know, um I'm like, at the end of the day, I can't look in the mirror and be proud of myself and look in my daughter's eyes and feel like I can teach her what I want to teach her about the world if I don't honor this. Like, I'd rather try and fail and like us have to sell everything we own than live in like a house of cards or whatever, like where
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm not being who I'm really meant to be. And for me,
Yeah.
that is what made me like willing to just do it.
And then did you go all in on a different offer? Was it in what ways was it different? Like how did you re-navigate? This is what this is going to look like for me in an aligned way as a mother.
Yeah. So I feel like pretty much my whole journey, I've always had the same message in general, like overall. I think that when I kind of started to get out of alignment it wasn't like what I was selling. Like at the time I was just only coaching coaches and I have so many coaches. I still love doing that. I might open another mastermind for something like that. So it's not like the what I was doing it was like the energy and like the how and the like that this is it has to be like this, and I'm only allowed to have these offers and things like that, where I was putting tons of rules on myself and how I did it. That's what really like felt out of alignment. Um, but so it was pretty easy to know what I wanted to help people with, because even in that program, I still was helping people in a lot of these ways, because I believe what makes me a great coach, what makes me a successful coach and entrepreneur is I'm always see like my job is to be a byproduct of my work first.
Yeah.
And so I always love to help people in every aspect of their life. So it was pretty clear. Like I was like, I want to do what I've been doing, which is just like breathe life into people's dreams and help them create a life where they have truly everything they want in every aspect. So I'd already kind of done a version of it, but what I ended up offering was a membership that helped people in all aspects of their life, like foundational coaching tools. And it really went back to where I started, like where I was like, you know, I had no idea that the thoughts and beliefs we had were like optional. I wasn't even aware of them. I didn't know how they were like creating my reality. And so once someone taught me that, like, I mean, I was like, now we're cooking with gas. So that's really where I like transition. So again, I don't feel like it felt like a huge shift to a ton of people, because I still felt like I was being me and my message was the same,
Yeah.
but it felt like I had the freedom to do it how I wanted to do it
Mhm.
and create it how I wanted to create it. So,
You stop putting the rules and regulations on yourself, it
yeah.
sounds like.
Mhm.
And were you like, did you consciously design this is what I want my life to look like becoming a mother? Like, did you pre-decide that? How did that shift when she actually, I just love hearing, honestly, for
Yeah,
personal
yeah,
things,
yeah.
how mothers who are very successful are navigating that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like I don't remember exactly the moment, but I know I spent lots of time sitting down going, okay, like if I could have my ideal amount of time to like work on my business, work on myself, take care of myself and be with my daughter, what would that look like? And I think what's really valuable, and I always have to remind myself, and I'm also learning in this new phase as we prep for another baby, is um, it changes. And so I think
Yeah.
sometimes I like to get my brain loves to get like attached to rules and like I made this decision, so we just stick with that. And so I think it's something that I'm constantly having to check in with myself. Like, so I shared this on my story yesterday that like I realized that our nanny came, she comes 4 days a week. We actually added on a day because I wanted some more time for myself. Like I don't use all of that time to work. I like
Yeah.
work out, I meditate, all of that. Um, but yesterday she was taking her to like a reading class and I couldn't figure out why I was like felt sad. I didn't even know. But then after I processed the emotion, I realized that I actually wanted to go.
Yeah.
And there are some days where I'm like so excited to get to work and I like want to work and I'm like okay with not being there for some of those things. But then yesterday I realized that that wasn't my truth and that's not what I wanted. And so this morning I like canceled a bunch of stuff. Our nanny didn't come till like 10 and we played all morning. So I think it's a constant evaluation and checking in and like paying attention to your body and what feels good and what feels like in alignment for you and what are those desires saying and allowing yourself to do that. Because I again, excuse me, I really like I'll sometimes like to bully myself, and whereas I'm like, "Oh, wait," I notice anytime I feel a little bit of, like, jealousy or, like, a
Mm,
disappointment that I can't be there for something, and every time that happens, I'm like, "Wait a minute, what's happening? Like, I have a choice here," and that's where I
yeah.
start to, like, make adjustments.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me that I I'm a lot better than I was, but is we have a nanny come 3 days a week, and I think that that feels really good for us right now. Is that I felt this internal pressure that the moment she gets here, now I have to be productive. Like,
Oh,
now
I
I have
felt that
to
at
work.
first for sure.
Like, now I have to get to it, and not realizing, and I even still explain this to my husband. I'm like, just because she arrives, that doesn't mean I have 6 hours to work on my business. Like, that's the time that I put stuff away. That's the time that I work out. That's the time, if I'm going to meditate, that I will. It's time I need to just ground sometimes. And maybe I have like 4 hours of work time within that, maybe. So,
Yeah.
as somebody, and I think you're quite similar to me, who is somebody who's lent on the hyperproductive side, that is a huge shift when you become a mother because productivity means something completely different, right?
Oh my gosh. I can relate to this so much. I remember like my first month of when we had our nanny, the first week, I did not get anything done because there was so much pressure that I
Yeah.
was like, I would like come up in my office and I was like, same thing. I'm like, okay, she's leaving at it was like the whole day would just slip away because I was like task switching and just so stressed out about the
Yeah.
time just going away that I got absolutely nothing done, and I felt
Yeah.
so stressed about
Yeah.
it. It's like,
For sure.
oh
Yeah.
no.
And I'm curious, how have you, like, what are some of the actual decisions you've made in your business that you would attribute to now having the freedom to be like, some days I'm going to do a bit more of this, and some days I'm going to do a little bit more of that? Maybe it's your offers, maybe it's a mindset shift. Like, what do you attribute to that?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding correctly, you wanna know, like, what are, like, the actual changes that I made? Is that
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I think a couple things. I think, the biggest mindset shift for me has been that not equating the number of hours I work or how much I do to the outcomes I get. I think our brains really love to do that. So, like, same thing, like, if it's like, "Oh, I've got 8 hours," or, "Oh, I've got 4 hours." Like, what I've really done is I take a step back and I'm like, "What actually has to be done?" Like, what am I? Because usually it's just a big story. Usually it's probably just, like, a couple things that have to be done that when I'm in my, like, energy and power, they literally will take me, like, 45 minutes. So I have to notice when I'm, like, just trying to move for the sake of moving and feeling like I'm
Sure. That's
productive and,
me.
like, working on my right? Like,
Yeah.
working on my business when really I'm just, like, sitting at my desk, like, just so, like, forcing an email out that takes me 3 hours because I'm not inspired. So I've had to connect to remembering that what creates results, the biggest results in my business isn't time, it's me feeling my best, it's me being connected to my
Mm,
creativity. It's not me, and this is, like this has been so hard for me too, like, it's not me sitting at my desk. I think we're so used to from, like, corporate culture and all of that, like, coming up to my office and sitting at my desk is, like, me working, and I'm like, "You know what? I love my office, but, like, I don't when my best content or my things that convert at the highest come from when I'm on a walk in the sun
yeah.
and breathing in fresh air, or when I'm playing with my daughter and I feel so much gratitude that this, like, idea hits me, and
Yeah.
so I've had to connect to that, like, productivity or hours worked or the amount I do is not gonna bring me the success. It's
Yeah.
the more I'm in my joy, the more I'm connected to my purpose, the more I feel good and I'm taken care of. So that has helped me shift to see that, like, I spend almost half of my day, some days, just, like, taking care of myself, doing things for me, and I still have to catch my brain. It'll be like, "Hey, it's 11 o'clock. Probably should do something."
Right.
But so that has been a huge shift. I think the other thing is, um, I allowing people to support me, and I've realized that's also where my next level is again,
Mm,
bringing in another human to the picture. Because I wanna be able to, when we have our next baby, have a full day, like, instead of having nanny for 4 days where I'm not with the kids, like, one of them is for Eva, my daughter, so now I have even less days,
mm,
right? And one of them is for our other kids, so, um, really allowing myself to receive support and getting curious about what brings me joy, what am I great at and I love, and what can only I do, and then, like, outsourcing everything else. Um, and being okay with it not like, especially my business, like, it not being me who's here to solve all the
yeah.
problems and do all the things.
Yeah. You've said such golden nuggets there that I'm even going to take, like remembering that it's not me sitting in front of my desk trying to twiddle my thumbs, going, I have to do all of this in order to feel good when the nanny leaves. So, like, it is giving myself permission to actually maybe prioritize looking after myself in those moments. I mean, I go to the gym, but maybe it's adding on a little bit to that, not rushing to get back and sit in front of my laptop and wonder how many things that I need to do to be productive. Maybe it's prioritizing 2 things that week that will move the needle forward.
Yes.
you
That
know?
I will say that's another thing is like I've had to learn. It sounds so crazy because I look back when I like worked a job and like I was like doing I feel like 20 things in one day, but like I've also had to learn myself and like, putting anything more than like 2 appointments during my day isn't like
Yeah.
my best thing. So I've had to learn that like I can't squash like 7 appointments in and something might take longer. Or I have to push things out. And that's been really helpful too, just to know myself. Like where I'm
Yeah.
like, yep, not doing more than 1 appointment a day. And then I can work around that.
Yeah, for sure. And is there one thing, I mean, you kind of highlighted it a little bit with the support piece, but that you're going to take into the second pregnancy, well, you're already pregnant, but into the second journey with your second child that you've really experienced from having Eva?
Yes. So, I mean, I already can feel the whole alignment conversation coming up again. There's already so much that's in
Mm,
alignment, but I can already start to see, especially as I, in my first trimester, feel the effects of that. That's really challenged me to like question, like, what is an alignment? What am I doing that I don't want to be doing? All of that. So, like, that piece of it is absolutely coming with me. And um, yeah, I think it's that awareness too is like when I start to feel those things like, okay, something's off. And then the last piece I think is where even more of my growth is that I feel like in a way I've been I like just created lots of success and super grateful for that. But I think I've been kind of playing a smaller game, whereas now this pregnancy is really challenging me to go, okay, if I think like 10 times bigger, who needs to go with me and who needs to support me and how can I start implementing that now and other things like systems and things that will support my business without me there is
yeah.
something that I'm really like working on as we prepare for the next one.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to thank you for being a woman who leads by example and shows other women that you actually do have permission to navigate motherhood and success and ambition with your own story, with your own
Mm,
definition of what abundance and fulfillment looks like. It's been such a wake up call becoming a mother and talking to other mothers who are in maybe full-time jobs who are navigating, how do I do this? How do I not want to do this? And just waking up to wanting to speak even more on that and have more women on the podcast that get to show other women that maybe we do get to define it for ourselves. So thank
mm.
you for showing up and living in that truth because
Thank you.
you're helping so many other mothers realize what's available to them. And that's such a gift.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So thank you for being here for this conversation. I'd just love to know, we'll end with this question, like, what does abundance mean for you?
I'm gonna go to a thought I had yesterday. To me, abundance is never being forced to say no to anything I want in life. And I don't even mean
Mm,
just financially, I mean anything. It's like truly believing in the accessibility and the limitless possibility of every available opportunity. And I think money is a huge part of that. But I think love, time, like, there's so many more pieces to that, and so it's like having the freedom of knowing, like, you're never forced to decide. You always get that choice.
I love that. You're the first one that's answered it in that way. So that's a really
Yeah?
good thing I'm going to sit with. Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you so much. For those that want to get to know you and connect with you on a deeper level, where can they find you?
Yeah, so Instagram is, like, my favorite place to hang out, so at Lindsey Mango _. I have a podcast as well, it's called The Life Coach Hotline, where people call in and they can get coaching, and we record it and share it kinda like an old radio
So
show.
cool. So cool.
And then I have a life coaching membership. It's lindseymangocoaching.com/life, where we help you implement these tools to finally create the changes when it comes to money, health, romance, finding your purpose, and starting your business. So yeah,
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Lindsay.
thank you for having me.